When I was 19, I started working at a local daycare run by deeply unethical and manipulative managers who forced us to work sick, overworked us, and then refused to send home a child who was infested with fleas. My friend and I quit in disgust, taping an actual flea to our resignation letters, only to collect a $2,000 grant check each on our very last day as the ultimate walking away bonus. The air in the local daycare used to hum with the happy chaos of children, and for a while, it felt like a genuinely good place to be. I was 19, full of energy, and working alongside my friend. It was a perfect entry into the working world. The place was run by an older married couple and their daughter, and they held the power over everything. At first, the oddities were small, easy to dismiss as typical workplace quirks. But the longer I stayed, the clearer the picture became. This wasn't just quirky. It was manipulative, unethical, and often flat out illegal. The primary issue was the terrifying disregard for our health and the well-being of the children. They were constantly short-staffed, a direct result of their own terrible management, and their solution was to use coercion and threats. I remember once, vividly, in the height of 2021, feeling terribly ill. When I tried to call out and told them I needed to get tested for COVID, the director's response was chillingly blunt. I was told not to get tested because they couldn't possibly manage without me. The implication was clear: show up, or you're jeopardizing your job. We were forced to mask the fever, mask the cough, and interact directly with vulnerable children. It was a moral violation every single time. This was just one example of the systemic abuse. They would leave us over ratio constantly, meaning two of us would be tasked with supervising a room full of toddlers that legally required 3 or 4 adults. The danger, the pure exhaustion, it was immense. We were routinely forced to work longer hours, sometimes staying well past closing time while the directors watched the clock with cold indifference and approved time off. A joke. They would take away days we had requested and planned for months in advance. Come in or you're fired was the standard, dismissive ultimatum. The entire environment was a super manipulative pressure cooker that, honestly, probably shaved years off my life expectancy, but it was the moment of the fleas that pushed me and my friend over the edge of all professional decency. A coworker, one of the director's friends, who also had a child enrolled at the daycare, began bringing her daughter in with a serious problem. The little girl, who was in mine and my friend's classroom, had fleas. Not just 1 or 2, but a full infestation. We would be brushing the little girl's hair, trying to maintain some semblance of classroom hygiene, and we would see fleas jumping out. It was horrifying. Not only was it a sanitary nightmare, but it was profoundly unfair to the child and a direct threat to the health and comfort of every other child in the class. My friend and I went straight to the bosses. We reported the issue multiple times, insisting that the child needed to be sent home immediately until the flea problem was thoroughly taken care of. The directors, instead of acting responsibly, turned nasty. They snapped at us, telling us that this didn't need to be shared with other parents, and that we were strictly forbidden from discussing it with anyone. They were actively covering up a health hazard to protect their friend and, likely, to avoid a potential health inspection. That was the last straw. The ethical line was not just crossed, it was trampled and set on fire. We looked at each other, and an unspoken plan formed. We returned to the classroom, and with surprisingly little effort, we managed to catch a flea from the room. We secured the tiny, horrifying creature with a piece of Scotch tape. It was proof, it was a symbolic act of defiance, and it was going straight to the top. Or in this case, taped to our resignation letters that we quit. But here's the best part. Despite the moral disgust, we genuinely loved the children in our care. We decided that we wouldn't abandon them abruptly, no matter how much we hated the management. We gave our full 2 weeks' notice, and then fate intervened with a perfectly timed piece of poetic justice. Unbeknownst to us, the state had recently issued a major grant intended to support daycare workers, amounting to $2,000 for every single employee. And the day the daycare happened to receive that massive check, it was the very last day of our 2-week notice period. They were legally obligated to pay us. As we walked out the door for the last time, having given them their resignation letters with a taped-up flea, having refused to be manipulated any longer, they were forced to hand my friend and me a check for $2,000 each. It was the sweetest, most unexpected bonus for leaving the worst job of my life. We never looked back. That $2,000 didn't just feel like a grant, it felt like severance, back pay for emotional distress, and a final middle finger from the state itself. Second story. My narcissistic ex treated me horribly, and when he dumped me and immediately started building a new life with his new girlfriend in an illegal container home, I decided to take the ultimate revenge. I anonymously reported his illegal structure to the council and dobbied him in for tax evasion, resulting in over $45,000 in fines and an order to completely demolish his dream home. Nobody gets away with cruelty when they cross me. The end of the relationship wasn't a sad, mutual parting. It was a brutal, drawn-out execution delivered by a narcissist. At 51, I finally saw through the cruel mind games and the emotional manipulation. I finally found the strength, not just to walk away, but to leave him standing alone in the wreckage he created. He was a master of cruelty, and I promised myself he would not get away with the damage he inflicted. MYX was a panel beater, working in the gig economy, doing quick, cash-in-hand jobs. He had recently bought a stunning 20-acre block of land, and to avoid the crippling rent of an industrial shed, he decided to build his own compound. This wasn't just a simple garage. He constructed a massive shed and, illegally, a container home right there on the block. It was meant to be his live-work dream, his perfect, tax-evading loophole. When we broke up, the complex wasn't quite finished, but I knew his every move. I knew he would be pouring every last cent into completing it, rushing to get the occupancy certificate he would never bother to get. Why the rush? Because he had already moved on. Fast. He was ready to move his new girlfriend right into the compound we had once planned to build our future around. The thought of him moving his new lover into our planned sanctuary, standing on the very ground where we had dreamed, filled me with a wild, uncontrollable fury. He wasn't just going to get away with the cruelty. He wasn't going to get away with building his perfect, illegal paradise on my emotional ruins. I did what any woman who has been treated like absolute dirt would do. I decided to make sure his paradise became his most expensive nightmare. I became the concerned neighbor. I sat down and carefully drafted an anonymous letter to the local council. I made sure it sounded urgent, worried, and absolutely legitimate. My report detailed the illegal structure, the massive shed and the container home that were clearly being occupied without a single planning permit, but I knew the council moved slowly, so I added the accelerants. I pointed out that the entire block was in a highly bushfire-prone area, immediately raising the risk profile. Then I dropped the kicker. I claimed there was no proper septic system installed, creating a major environmental hazard. And finally, to guarantee a rapid, boots-on-the-ground investigation, I made up the most effective detail of all. I claimed there were children living there. Child safety trumps bureaucratic indifference every time. It was a complete fabrication, but I didn't care. I needed the council to investigate now. The results were catastrophic for him, and absolutely exhilarating for me. The council investigation was swift and merciless. They confirmed everything I reported, minus the phantom children, of course. The consequences were immediate and crippling. He was charged a jaw-dropping $17,000 for occupying a building without an occupancy permit. And that was just the start. He was then charged another $28,000 for the illegal building works themselves, the total damage, $45,000 in fines. But the icing on the cake? He was formally ordered to remove the entire illegal building, his dream home, his secret workshop, the place he was rushing to move his new girlfriend into. All of it had to be bulldozed into oblivion. But I didn't stop there. Cruelty requires compounding interest. I realized his cash-in-hand gig economy work provided another perfect opportunity. I subsequently dobbied him into the tax office for serious tax evasion. I don't know the exact outcome of that investigation yet, but I can bet you it hurts. The inconvenience, the mandatory audits, the months of providing documentation and statements, the sheer stress of dealing with a tax man. It's an endless, soul-crushing penalty designed to inconvenience him for years. I feel good about it? Hell yes. Every cent of those fines, every hour of stress he endures from the tax investigation is a direct consequence of the cruelty he showed me. I taught him the most valuable lesson of all. Nobody is cruel to me without severe, lasting consequences.